So this is my first ever long book review kind of. Yeah, we'll see how this goes. One of the things that I wanted to do, and I'm not really good at it. This will probably wear me out, and I'll end up taking a nap. But one of the things that I wanted to do was start talking about um, situations and circumstances and books and opportunities and all of those amazing things that pop up in our life where we get to learn from. And one of the books that I picked up last year that I read but I didn't actually get to review, it's Our Happy Divorce by Nikki D. Bartolo and Benjamin Helfand. I had seen it and I knew immediately that their story was a fairy tale. And not in a bad way, because we all want fairy tales. I am just waiting for my fairy tale to happen because I believe in them. I believe in the goodness of people. I believe that when given the opportunity and when literally blinders are taken off, you can do amazing things. And that's what I love about their story. Um, if you look at it, it took them 10 years, a little over, to get their book published, which for someone who is trying, who has a book and a half written, to know that it's going to take me another 10 or so years to even get the first one done, I'm just like, oh, fuck, what did I get myself into? But what is most important to note is, yeah, they wanted to get their story out there. They wanted to show that there's a different way to co-parent. There's a different way to handle divorce. There's a different way to do things. And sure, they had the opportunity to live it out for 10 years before anyone got to hear their story. And the one person that they impacted the most was their son. And that is all I want from my life. I want one person. I mean, I would love to have more, but I want to know that when someone comes up against something, they're like, oh, fuck, I know that there's a different way to do this, and I am going to choose to do it differently. And I hope and I pray that it's my kids, and they're their own people. They may not. They may decide, yeah, mom fucked us up. We need years of counseling and all this kind of stuff. I don't know. I'm hoping not. I'm hoping that I set an example in many different ways. One, authenticity. But two, what I discovered in this book that I so appreciated. So I posted, or I am getting ready to post. I've already pre-written it. it's right here. It's about putting aside your pride. And I knew from my divorce that there was no way I was going to achieve what Nikki and Ben did. There just wasn't, because I was in a relationship and a post relationship and a co-parenting relationship with a narcissist. And I knew that going into it, because for 15 years of marriage, we spent 8 of them in counseling. So obviously things are not going to be able to translate. Do I believe there are narcissists around every corner? I do not. I do not. What I do believe is I learned some really unhealthy coping mechanisms. I learned passive aggressiveness. I learned how to stand your ground, which can and does look like toxic behavior. And it is my job, it is my responsibility to address those issues, to make sure that I don't respond in ways that are learned. Those are learned behaviors. And that is not me. That is not someone I want to be. I don't want to be passive aggressive. I would love to be able to have great conflict management skills. I don't. And a lot of it I've learned. And that's not who I want to be, and that's not who I want to stay as. So as I've been going through everything, and as I've been just re-engaging into what I want my life to look like moving forward. One of the things that I know that I want to do is I want to continue to be authentic. I want to continue to be real. And I learned a long time ago that when it comes to people, when it comes to conflict, when it comes to issues that come up, you gotta lay your pride down. I'm sorry, there's no room for pride. If you fucked up, you fucked up. And it can't be about this whole thing where you want justification, because I'm sorry, that's not accepting responsibility. There shouldn't be this thing where you look at someone and say, well, you did this. I'm sorry, that's called blame shifting. Instead, what we need to do as people and as individuals, as a generation that is raising another generation that we're just going to have to leave in it. And I mean, this is a continual process until the world actually ends and explodes. We are raising people to not be able to own their own choices. And so you'll see this in the blog, you'll see this in the thing, but what I learned a long time ago is when it came to making something right with someone, I needed to let go of my pride. So kind of, if you were like to read this along, and this is like my first video, so not great at it yet. But one of the big things that came as a shock to my ex-husband was the very first time I apologized to my son. And at that point, we had been married, probably almost 8 or 9 years. My son is a sweet-spirited child, and I was having a shitty day, and I lashed out, and I knew immediately, seeing the hurt on his face, that I needed to own what I had done. And it would have been easy, yeah, mom tired, mom this, you should have been doing that. It would have been easy to do all of that, but I needed to, as a mom, own that, because I didn't want to chip away at his sweet spirit. And I remember my ex, ooh, yeah, that was a conversation we had for a while, because for him and his narcissistic behavior and his gaslighting, they specifically want apologies set a certain way. They want validation. They want their self-esteem built. They want, that is one of the things that happens with narcissists. And it had been 9 years of that. 9 years of me having specific regulations of how I was to apologize. I was supposed to look in his eyes. I was supposed to touch him a certain way. My voice was supposed to be a certain, level, all of that. And if it didn't happen, then we would restart the conversation. So, I mean, I was a master at this. And it was fake. Because none of my needs were getting met and none of my issues were being addressed. So obviously I was like, well, fuck this. I'm just gonna, whatever makes this argument stop, that's what's gonna happen. Until I had to be real, until I had to be authentic, until I had to own my actions, because I had a little boy that I had hurt, and I was responsible for making sure that I took care of healing that broken spirit. That was on me. And so I did. And oh, the hell I paid for that, let me tell you. And it's fine, because at that point, I had learned what it was to really own my actions, and what it was to really own my apologies, and what it was to lay down my pride. And I mean, I've said this before, and I'll say it again. I'm a little weird. I am, for me, most of my life has been open mouth, insert foot. This is what I do. And I don't try to. It's not like I'm like, hey, I'm going to talk about these issues and be like, you suck. A lot of times this is about like how I need to change and what I need to do. But one thing I won't do is I won't sugarcoat things. I will make sure that I am honest and I will make sure I am authentic. So hold on, I gotta go back to my notes because like this is, where is it? Where's that? Oh, okay. So my last blog post, it says mistakes we made is important to note because I truly believe that two wrongs do not make a right. We can speak our truth without being harsh or damaging to the other person. And I love that quote because it came from that gaslighting book, which is so important. You have to be able to speak your mind, which is something for me, I'm not good at that. I've never been good at that. I've had to learn how to do it in a way that doesn't offend people, but also is still true to what I'm feeling and how I need to communicate because it's very important. You can totally see my daughter in the reflection over there. I love it. She's getting water. It's okay. This is like my first test run. We'll see how this goes. So anyways, like I said, where did I go? Okay. So I shut down my social media, I don't know, about 3 weeks ago, 2 weeks ago. I don't know, something like that. It was just, I was going through a really rough patch. Everything was hard. I could barely get out of bed. I struggled. I struggled in every possible area. And I had a conversation with someone that I thought would be okay to start engaging in a broader sense. Because when you meet people, I've heard this so many times. You know that there are topics that you can't discuss until you kind of like see where everyone stands. If you meet someone in a bar, you don't talk about politics, you don't talk about religion, you don't talk about, any of the hot button issues. And I had spent some time with this person, so I was like, okay, I feel like, okay, we're getting on a different level. We can start having these conversations. Boy, was I wrong. And so I wrote specifically, let's take for example my conversation with Karen. Now, this person took offense to the fact that I named her Karen. I didn't know what else to call her. I could have called her Sally. I could have called her Donna, but that's my ex-mother-in-law. That would have been weird. I could have called her Sarah. I could have called her Lynn. I could have called her Ann. I just, Karen just went, here you go. And she got super offended about the fact that I called her Karen. That was not my intention. It was the easiest thing. And so I was like, yeah, sure, Karen. Yeah, again, insert open, insert mouth. This is what I do. So anyways, so I said, let's take example for my conversation with Karen a month or so ago. Since I have already apologized both publicly and privately, I was still blocked and told that she had moved on and I should as well. Okay. But, okay. So, it doesn't mean I'm not going to use it as an example now because this for me is where I go, we need to change this. So I said, what's important to know is I'm moving this conversation from what I know to be true. So this is the situation that I know to be true. I'm moving it out to conjecture where it's like, okay, I've had conversation with multiple people who have had issues with people that they've met, people that they know, I'm just broad spectruming this whole situation. This is not, in light of specifically what happened with us or, what may or may not happen. I'm not saying that all, but what I'm seeing is a common theme. And this is where I want to make a difference in the common theme. It shouldn't be a common theme anymore. So, and I can picture it sitting at a bar or with a group of friends or at a family event. Karen, again, not trying to be offensive, but Karen brings up what happened to her. Describing the situation, most people would immediately side with Karen because they're hearing her side of the story. I get it. It is what it is. They're your friends. And one, Karen's not a bad person. And I'm putting this in the light of a normal, healthy, This isn't someone where you're like, oh God, Karen's talking again. No, like we're talking just, this is a healthy, good person who does what they can to care about people. It just happened to be a conflict situation that needed to be handled differently. That's the way I see it. So, if you allow the conversation to continue, she explains the situation and you're like, oh yeah, oh God, that's awful. Okay. Most people leave it. I am not most people. And I hate that about myself. I really do. Like, sometimes I just want to be like, just shut up, Johnny. Don't do it. 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 And I still end up doing it. That is kind of my life story. Okay, but anyways, so if you allowed the conversation to continue forward or dug a little deeper and found out that apologies were given, remorse was shown, and attempts for reconciliation were made, do you applaud Karen's negative attitude toward her offender, or do you encourage her to see that there's a missed opportunity for growth, grace, and understanding? Yeah, I tend to always point out, missed an opportunity. You missed what could have been. How do you not know that this person would have been your best friend? The one person that you needed to connect with most in this world to help you move forward and achieve your goals and encourage you and all that kind of stuff. You missed it. And it's hard. It's hard to explain that to people, especially because, my window of conversation tends to be with, I'm 40. All my people tend to be a little bit younger. So I'm looking like, hey, you understand, you've got a whole lifetime of stuff happening that's going to come before you. And you get the opportunity to meet someone. Maybe let's not just throw them out. Let's maybe kind of go, oh, okay, yeah, sorry, that was like a miscommunication. That was a misunderstanding. Let's go ahead and work this out and let's see what we can keep building. I have all kinds of crazy, hey, if you're in construction and oops, you accidentally cut something wrong at the very beginning of your foundation, you don't just stop building the house, you readjust. That's how I think. Okay, so anyways, okay, so I always point out the missed opportunity. That's kind of what I do, because what I truly believe is that's what's missing in this world. So let's break this down. Was Karen offended by the personal conversation being used via whatever means? If we're doing this in giant conjecture, she heard that this person was talking about their conversation, or however. Was Karen offended by the personal conversation being used? Yes. Okay. Was Karen, did Karen actually make those statements that were being used? Yeah, I'm gonna go with yes. She actually said those things. Accountability, just throwing that out there. Is communication really about how people send and receive information? Because what is hard for most people to understand is just because you say something one way does not mean someone is receiving it that same way. And there are so many situations, and I mean, this is a broader, bigger topic that we need to talk about. But if you are coming at something where it's like this, and someone's looking at you going, I have a differing opinion. It's that whole black and white thing where it's not like, okay, we're not going to come to the middle here. We're just going to be like, okay, well, you keep preaching this, but your double standard that you're setting does not apply to this situation. And that is how and why communication can't be just so one-sided. You have to know, and this is a big thing that I've had to learn, because I see things and think things and speak things a different way. I have to make the extra effort to make sure people are understanding my point. And I had to do that taking it out of conjecture and bringing it back into the specific situation. I had to do that with her before we even got to the broader topic. I had to bring it back in, and I was like, I disagree with you on this point, and this is why. And she was like, okay, well, it makes more sense now that you say that. Exactly. It is my responsibility to make sure that I explain it in a way where it's like, okay, I know what I'm trying to say. I'm not trying to be offensive. I'm not trying to be hurtful. I'm not trying to disregard your opinion. What I'm trying to do is open up the platform for discussion. And that didn't happen. So what ended up happening, let's take it all the way back out to broad spectrum. Was Karen offended by the personal conversation being used? Yes. Did Karen actually make those statements that were used in the conversation? Yes. Is communication about how people send and receive information? Yes. Was it the intention of the offender to hurt Karen? And this is a big one. No. In 9, okay, we'll go 7. 7 out of 10, conflicts, issues, communication breakdowns, 6 times out of 10, you are not attempting to hurt that person. There's just a disagreement. And that is huge. That is the biggest thing I wish I could communicate to people is just because it triggered you, just because it hit a nerve, just because you were like, oh, I don't like how you're saying that to me, doesn't mean that that was intentional. Yes, if you were offended, yes, if you were hurt and you communicated that and the offended person was able to look at you and be like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. That's not what I meant. Obviously, I'm trying to open up debate. I'm trying to have a conversation, that kind of stuff. Take that for, what it is. It for me, I just wrote, was it the intention of the offender to hurt Karen? No, of course not. Did the offender apologize to Karen? Yes. So what we have here is a conflict, an apology, a reconciliation equals healthiness. And when you do it, what ended up happening and what ends up happening and why I have so many conversations with people in different situations, bars, families, friends, I look at them and say, okay, so there was a conflict. The person apologized, and yet you still shut them down. You cut off communication. You blocked them. You ignored them. You stonewalled them. Why? Because 2 wrongs make a right? No, of course not. And instead, all you've done is something unhealthy. You are sowing unhealthy seeds. Yeah, did that person trigger a mistrust, a insecurity, something where it had nothing to do with them? And I'll have that conversation because sometimes they'll be like, well, I stopped trusting them. Okay, well, one, that was your first conflict with that person, so that says more about you than it does about them. Sorry. I mean, I hate being that person. I hate being that honest and that forward, but your triggers, your mistrust, your nerves getting hit, all of those kind of things say more about you than it does about them, especially if we're in conflict number 1. Now, I get boundaries. I get them. I understand them. They're healthy. If you have someone that is constantly engaging you, constantly trying to rub at you and get you to argue and have conflict, and yes, boundaries are essential. That's what you need to have in your life, especially with those kind of people. But if we're talking conversation number 1, conversation number 2, maybe conversation number 3, especially if they're all different topics, maybe you're engaging in someone who is a little more hot-headed or a little bit more passive-aggressive or a little bit more naive in their understandings, and they're going to stick to their guns because they have no idea what they're really talking about. Again, if you are unable to continue a healthy conversation where it's okay, conflict, apology, reconciliation, healthiness, that says more about you than it does about them. And that is why I love this book. I love this book because one thing I knew is that they learned that it was about them. That what triggers each ex-husband or the ex-husband and the ex-wife kept hitting with each other, they had to come back and say, damn it, okay, we're in a place where this doesn't, why are we still doing this? We're not married, and where triggers are automatically like, hey, I'm fighting with you. I'm just going to go ahead and do this because, that's sometimes what married people do. But they're in a position where they can start having healthy communication, healthy relationships, healthy understanding where it's okay, conflict, apology, resolution, reconciliation, move on. 1, 2, 3, go. 1, 2, 3, go. And when you stop the conversation, when you start stonewalling, when you start blocking, all you're doing is setting up for a loss of potential. You're sowing seeds, which I'm not even going to start with the whole Christian conversation because yeah, we're just going to avoid that topic. Anyways, okay, I'm going to move on to my notes.